So there was most absolutely a setting that I was extremely confused about when it came to creating a pocketing toolpath. And I'm working on making custom ceiling panels. And the custom ceiling panels, they're just 2x2 ceiling panels that are going to be made out of 3/4 MDF. But I was creating just a stepped profile in the 3/4 MDF. And I'll show you a photo of it before we move on. So 3/4, I was basically cutting, let's just say for the sake of, easy math, a 24-inch by 24-inch. Okay, they're a little bit less, but I came in from either end 2-inch, let's just say. So I'm cutting 22 by 22. I'm going 3/16 deep. 3/16. Cut that tool path. The second tool path is now 21 by 21, 21 by 21, 3/16 deeper, come up with a step. So I'm cutting that tool path, but now I'm air cutting the first 3/16. And to add insult to injury, the next one is 20 by 20, and that's 3/8 deep. So now I'm air cutting 3/16, air cutting 3, because that's my pass depth, before I get down to it. And I realized, well, that this just doesn't seem right. So I finished the job, and yeah, it took an hour to cut that item with all the wasted time and the profile and the multiple passes and the last pass and whatnot. But what ended up happening was I dug into how that would end up actually working with adjusting the start depth for the pocket toolpath. And I'm going to show you the finished my proof that I understood how it works. And here is that proof. So I don't have the ceiling tile, it's up front and I put it into the ceiling, but basically what I did here was prove to myself that I understood how it worked by creating a 3-inch, a 2-inch, whatever it was, 3-inch diameter, 2.5 to 1.5, 1-inch diameter circle. The vectors were just simple circles, and they were pocketing toolpaths, where with the first one, it was start depth 0, cut depth 1/8 of an inch. The second one was start depth 1/8 of an inch, the cut depth was 1/8 of an inch. The third, the start depth is 1/4 inch with an 1/8 of an inch cut depth. The fourth was a 1/2 inch start depth with an 1/8 of an inch, and so on. And I'll show you now in the software how to go about creating this, and then we'll duplicate this. We'll watch the tool do it. And then I'll show you something that still strikes me as odd. And that's what those settings look like after you create the toolpath. So let's move on. You know what's worse than not being able to find the instructions to rehome your automatic tool changer? It's not participating in the Architectural Builder Supply March Contest giveaway. Okay, in no particular order, this is the ceiling tile that I created, and that's just to give an idea of what it looks like up in the ceiling, in the sense that I believe my design needs to get tweaked because you kind of lose the detail when it's up in the ceiling. I may increase the width, but what I'm driving at is okay, this picture is as good as any of them. So I've got roughly 24 by 24, then I've got 22 by 22, 21 by 21, and then 20 by 20 as I'm calling these three pocketing toolpaths. So what I ended up doing was cutting this 22 by 22, 3/16 deep. This one's 21 by 20. It's not, it's bigger than that, but just for argument's sake, 3/16. So by the time I got to this one and this one, I'm air cutting because of my settings. Now, what ended up happening is after I made this, I needed to explore how to very elegantly save myself a lot of time. That's kind of what it looks like. And one of those things was copying vectors does not copy toolpaths. So I've learned I need to get into the copy array toolpath functionality, but also it forced me to experiment with the pocket start depth and cut depth. So let's experiment with that and we'll see how it works. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw 5 circles, as you can see, 10-inch diameter, 8-inch, 6-inch, 4-inch, and 2-inch diameter. And I'm going to give them a depth that's different by 1/8 of an inch each step. So 1/8 deep, quarter, 3/8, half-inch, 5/8 deep. Okay. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. So I just used AutoCAD Lite here just to give an idea of what I want to experiment with. And the experiment is basically going to be, how do you tell VCarve what you want in the sense of what it's going to do, so, or what you expect it to do. And my workpiece is roughly 12 by 24, so my width is 12. My height is 24. Now my material thickness, that I need to actually measure. So I'm going to measure that. And as I was walking over to measure it, I realized I didn't need to measure it because I do happen to know that the material thickness is greater than the depth I'm going to be cutting at, but it is 0.713. I'm just going to leave it there because I'm not going to be cutting all the way through it. I've zeroed to the the material surface. A datum is in the lower left-hand corner. We'll just leave the resolution there. We'll click OK. All right, so and what I'm actually going to do is draw the circles so that we can see them as only half of the circle. So I'm going to increase my material width. I'm just going to make it 24. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw those circles right in the center because I'm going to show you what it looks like basically cut in half. I want to see a cross section of what I've done. Okay, now let's pull up the toolpath. I'm going to do a pocket. Now, what I had done originally is my start depth for my 10-inch diameter circle is indeed 0. I'm starting at the surface of the material, and my cut depth is 1/8 of an inch. Awesome. So 10-inch circle, calculate. Yep, that's what I want it to look like. I've got my z-axis, and you can see down in the lower right-hand area, it's 1/8 of an inch deep. That looks good. 10-inch circle. Now, let's go back to the 2D view. Let's select the next vector, the 8-inch diameter circle. Second vector, pocket toolpath. What I did here was I started at 0 again, but I knew that my cut depth was going to be 1/4 inch. This is going to be 8-inch circle. Calculate. Okay. Let's reset the preview. Let's preview all toolpaths. All right, cutting the 10-inch first because that's what's checked down here. Watch the check mark here when it goes to the 8-inch. All right. Yeah. Now the 8-inch is checked, and it's running that. Let's see what it did. Okay. So we know we're at an 1/8 inch deep here. We're at a 1/4 inch deep in here because we can see it. And that works. Let's close. Pocket toolpath. But what actually happens is the number of passes is why it's working. But if we change the edit, we change the number of passes to 2, and it's going to do an 1/8 of an inch at a time. And we're going to call that 8-inch circle. Calculate. We're going to get rid of the first one. Let's preview all toolpaths. Let's cut that 10-inch. Speed it up a little bit. Watch the check mark down here when it completes running the 10-inch circle. Check mark goes to 8-inch, but nothing's happening. Nothing happened in the entire first half, and it made its first pass, and nothing developed out here. So I want to slow that down. Let's reset the preview. Preview all toolpaths. I'm going to speed it up to do the 10-inch circle. And now I'm going to slow it down. All right, we hit the 8-inch circle. It's running, but you don't see anything. That's because it's air cutting 1/8 of an inch on top of here. And it'll get halfway through, literally halfway through. It should get to 50% toolpath simulation by the time we see something happening. 46, 49. Yeah, at 50 it starts cutting again. Now let's actually watch this run. Okay, so we're going to run the GoPro. I did an air cut, and it was behaving the way that I intended. Second 8-inch, cutting the first pocket. Yeah, makes sense. So it was ramping in. So it's basically doing 1/8 of an inch because I set that 8-inch diameter circle at 2 passes, 1/8 of an inch each pass. So sitting through the excruciating amount of time to watch this, for me, reinforces the very point of how to set your start depth and your cut depth, because a more efficient cut is going to be remembering manually that your second circle can start 1/8 inch deeper because you already cut to 1/8 of an inch deep. I'm going to let it run because I personally want the reinforcement of watching it run. Toolpath as well, a lot of wasted time. Now it should start that same 8-inch circle in its second path, cutting in 1/8 of an inch, and it's spiraling in. conventional cutting, I should be climb cutting this because of the bit that I have in there. I believe I'll have to check that. This is just an experiment for pocket and start depth, but the outside cut is awful on that. When I run the rest of the circles, I'm going to check and then likely change the cut orientation.
If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video.
Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, as we can see, it operated the way that we thought it would, where there was a substantial amount of air cutting. Let's go back and let's create this the way that it ought to be created by taking into account where we are at every successive cut. So let's look at this at the 10-inch circle toolpath. Let's review what's happening here. Yeah, okay. So I encountered this initially as well, where I was seeing stuff here that I didn't expect to see. A 1/4 inch, that was the total depth. It's not what I'm cutting to. I'm cutting to 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to change that to 0.125. And that's going to be called 10-inch circle. And we're going to continue to climb cut this. Start depth is 0. It's the top of our material surface, 1/8 inch deep. Actually, let's do it better. Start 0, D125. That'll allow us to better understand what we're using. And Chris Burns from Shopbot has always said, use really good descriptive file names. It helps you remember, and he said it many times in his very easygoing sort of pace. And what I have started to realize, it's just best to grasp onto what he says initially and just do it that way. And what I mean by that is, I had a special character. I had an ampersand in my file name, and Shopbot couldn't run the file even though VCarve created the toolpath, and it wouldn't load. And I thought, well, I wonder if it's that special character, and it is. I renamed it, and it worked perfectly. And Chris had told me that. So we're going to calculate this 0 and 1/8 inch. Calculate. Okay, fine. I'm going to get rid of this 10-inch circle because I don't need it. Now, let's get back to 2D. Let's look at the 8-inch circle, which I have highlighted. Close. Yeah, that vector is highlighted. Okay, so it inherited the properties of what I had recalculated. So this start depth is going to be 125, and it's going to end up at 0.25. We're going to call this one 8-inch circle, 0.125, and 0.25. Okay, calculate. Awesome. Let's get rid of this one. Let's go to our 2D view, select the 6-inch diameter. That vector is highlighted. Let's create a pocket. Now this time, we're going to start at 0.25. We're going to go to 375. And it is nice that it inherits those properties from the sense that you kind of know where you're starting from, I think. 37, home, 6, 0.25 is our start. Our depth is 375. Okay, I like that. Everything else is staying the same. We're going to calculate. Looking good. Let's go to 2D. Let's uncheck that. Let's go to our 4-inch circle. Close. Pocket. All right, now this time we're going to start at 375. We're going to go to 0.5. Everything is the same. Let's give it a descriptive name. We're going to end up at 0.5. We're going to start at 375. Let's calculate. Material thickness 0.71. I don't know where that's coming from. So let's check this. Material thickness 0.713. We've not gotten through that at all. We're going to see what we can see when we preview these tool paths. That to me is interesting. Let's select our 2-inch diameter circle. This is going to start at 1/2 inch and it's going to end up at 0.625. Let's take a look. This is our 2-inch circle. I may have something named improperly. We'll check. 625. Calculate. Yeah, we're getting that maximum tool depth, 1 1/8. Ah, I have figured it out. Yep. Boy, I'm sure glad you get warning messages. And this is really how we learn, going through the steps.
If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video.
So here's what I've done incorrectly. I've done them all incorrectly, in fact. So we're going to have to rename these. We're going to have to recalculate these. Okay, so let's look at our 10-inch diameter. So I'm starting at 0, and I want to end up at 1/8 of an inch. Calculate. Okay. Rename, copy. Delete that first tool path because it's wrong. Rename. Right. Now here's the mistake, and it caught us down here. What I'm actually asking it to do on the 8-inch diameter circle is I'm asking it to start at 1/2 inch, and then my cut depth was 5/8, and that's where it's getting 1 1/8. What has to happen is the cut depth needs to stay always 1/8 on all these tool paths. So let's fix it. Looks good. Let's get to 2-inch. All right, that looks good. So we bring this up. Our mouse cursor is over 10-inch, 1/8 deep, 1/4 deep, 3/8 deep, 1/2 inch deep, 5/8 deep. So that all looks correct. Really important is nothing is cutting through. I don't want to cut through the material. You know, it's interesting because with this climb cut, I would expect it to be cutting in clockwise direction. Because I'm cutting only 1/8 of an inch deep, one pass on all of these would be perfect. That'll have to be a mystery that I solve at some point in the future. Close. Let's select. Let's save. Toolpaths to be saved. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Everything looks good. Save the toolpaths. Circle experiment with, and that was the problem. I had an ampersand here. That was no good. Comma might be okay, but he said no special characters, and I'm really learning to just do what the man says. So 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, let's save. Okay, awesome. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to pause this and simply air cut it. I don't feel like I need to record that. I just want to make sure I don't do anything major wrong. There you go.
If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, we're going to start, bring our creation to life, pick the proper file, start. Wants us to hit start on the pendant, turn on the spindle as you can hear, and then hit enter. Now it should be moving us into position, which it is. Awesome. Let's start the cut. There we go. Looks good. Looks like it's cutting correctly. But we'll address that pinion. Let's take these pieces off. Let's rotate. Let's just rotate them so I can show you a better look at it. There we go. The cutting time, I don't know what it was on the enormous amount of air cutting that we were doing, but this is far faster, 6.5 minutes or whatever. But you can see what we've got here. Material surface, 10-inch, 1/8-inch deep, 8-inch, 1/4-inch deep, 6-inch, 3/8, 4-inch, half, 2-inch, 5/8. Let's finish this up and just revisit the tool paths to reinforce the lesson that I've at least learned, and we will wrap it up. Thank you very much.
And that turned out pretty good. So here's our finished project. Again, nothing went through the material. We'll get rid of these tool paths. All right, a 10-inch tool path. Yeah, this is great. All of the lines, they don't change the depth at all. Let's throw in the 8-inch, get rid of the 10-inch. And all of those lines are clearly not up at the 10-inch level. And you probably know this, but the red line indicates where the tool's coming from. Let's do the same thing. Bring in the 6-inch and pull away the 8-inch. Nothing is up in this level. And it's dawning on me, this is a great way to check the tool path as well, in the sense that I could create the same 10-inch tool path. I could give it a depth of 1/4-inch. I could tell it to run in 2 passes, and it's going to show those lines at 2 different depths. And there's our 2-inch diameter. And all of it is literally right here. Where are you starting and what is your cut depth? What I've learned is you have to understand where you are actually starting. And once you know where you're starting, I think you'll be able to make these tool paths at the proper depth, so you're not wasting time cutting air for no reason when you don't intend to air cut. So here we are wrapping up our exceptionally long-winded proof of concept in terms of understanding how start depth and cut depth work. I have found, being pretty new to CNC, just a few months, the way I expect it to work is not how it works. I think it would work one way, and nope, that's not at all. So test it, figure it out. And what I am finding is that when it doesn't work, and it's 180 degrees the wrong direction of what I expected, the answer coalesces. It presents itself pretty quickly. And I think it might be just a aligning, a proper honing or sharpening the edge of thinking, of getting into the mindset of how the proper thinking is to figure it out. Going through these long steps allows me to reinforce what the functionality of the software is. It's kind of like writing vocabulary words in grammar school, whatever times. I can spell the word sagacious because I've written it 100 times. So we're going to move on with the next project. I hope this was valuable at some level, at some degree, and thank you very much for watching.
You know what's worse than losing your Z-axis on your CNC machine? It's not participating in the Architectural Builders Supply March giveaway.